Have you ever looked at someone who seems financially comfortable and quietly wondered, what did they figure out that I didn't? Not because you want a mansion, not because you're chasing luxury. You just want breathing room. You want to stop checking your bank account before buying groceries. You want unexpected expenses to feel inconvenient instead of catastrophic. You want to imagine 5 years from now without feeling like you're gambling on hope. And maybe that's the frustrating part. 5 years doesn't sound like a long time, but it doesn't sound short either. It's long enough to change your life, yet short enough that it slips away before you notice. Most people don't wake up 5 years later because of one terrible financial decision. They wake up because thousands of small choices quietly pulled them in a direction they never intentionally chose. So today, I don't want to talk about becoming rich overnight. I want to talk about something much more realistic. How ordinary people can build meaningful wealth in 5 years. Not influencer wealth, not lottery wealth. Real wealth. The kind that lets you sleep better. The kind that gives you options. The kind that's built slowly enough that it actually lasts. Because wealth isn't usually created in dramatic moments, it's created on ordinary Tuesdays. One of the biggest misunderstandings about wealth is that people think it's mostly about income. If I just earned more, if I got promoted, if my business finally took off, then everything would fall into place. And yes, income matters. It would be strange to pretend otherwise. Making more money generally creates more opportunities. But income alone explains far less than people think. We've all seen people earning 6 figures who still feel trapped, and we've met people earning far less who somehow seem surprisingly calm. Not because they have everything figured out, but because they built a relationship with money that's fundamentally different. Here's something I wish more people understood. Money problems aren't always math problems. Many of them are behavior problems, they're emotional problems, they're identity problems. Sometimes they're problems created by comparison, sometimes they're created by fear, sometimes they're created simply because nobody ever taught us how money actually behaves over long periods of time. Think about how most of us learned about finances. School spent years teaching algebra, history, geography, literature, important subjects. But almost nobody explained what happens when your lifestyle quietly grows every time your paycheck grows. Nobody explained that buying expensive things often feels better before you own them than after. Nobody explained that peace of mind is often a financial asset that's impossible to measure on paper, so we learn through experience, and experience can be expensive. Imagine two friends graduating around the same time. They both start earning similar salaries, nothing extraordinary, just decent jobs. The first person assumes success should look successful: better apartment, better car, weekend trips, the newest phone, dinner becomes delivery, coffee becomes habit. Every raise immediately becomes permission to spend a little more. Nothing outrageous, just small upgrades. The second person enjoys life too. They're not obsessed with saving every dollar, but every raise gets split. Some improves their lifestyle, some quietly improves their future. Neither person notices much difference after 1 year, or even 2, but by year 5. The gap becomes difficult to ignore, not because one earned dramatically more, because one consistently kept creating assets while the other consistently created obligations. That's one of the strange truths about wealth. It often grows invisibly before it becomes obvious. Psychologists talk about something called present bias. It's the tendency to value immediate rewards much more than future rewards. Our brains evolved to survive today, not optimize retirement accounts. If someone offered you $50 today or $60 next month, many people choose today, not because it's mathematically smarter, because today feels real, tomorrow feels abstract. The challenge is that wealth belongs almost entirely to future you, but spending belongs almost entirely to present you, and present you is persuasive. Present you says, you've worked hard, you deserve this, life is short, you can always save later. Those statements aren't completely wrong. The problem is when they become automatic, because later eventually becomes now. And suddenly 5 years disappeared. Shati. Something else quietly slows wealth building: Lifestyle inflation. This one is sneaky because it rarely feels irresponsible. You earn a little more. You move somewhere slightly nicer. Your monthly subscriptions increase. Your wardrobe changes. Restaurants become normal instead of occasional. You don't feel extravagant. You just adapt. Psychologists call this hedonic adaptation. Humans get used to improvements remarkably fast. The excitement fades. Then we search for another improvement. Not because we're greedy, because our brains normalize almost everything. The car that felt luxurious 6 months ago eventually feels ordinary. The apartment that once amazed you becomes your baseline. The raise that made you celebrate becomes expected income. And that's why building wealth often feels strangely invisible. You have to resist spending money that already feels emotionally spent. Now here's the part that surprised me when I first understood it. Building wealth isn't about saying no forever. It's about deciding which yes matters most. Every dollar has multiple futures. You can spend it, save it, invest it, reduce debt, create flexibility. None of those choices are automatically right or wrong. The question is, which version of your future are you quietly voting for? Because every purchase is more than a transaction. It's a vote. Most votes feel insignificant. One coffee, one subscription, one impulse purchase, one financing agreement. But elections aren't decided by one vote either. They're decided by thousands. Financial lives work much the same way. Let's talk about time. 5 years sounds ordinary until you realize what consistent progress can actually accomplish. Imagine someone who begins saving and investing a manageable amount every month. Not because they're sacrificing everything they enjoy, because they've intentionally created room, month after month, year after year. Nothing dramatic happens, which is exactly why so many people quit. We're conditioned to expect visible progress, but investing often rewards patience long before excitement. Think about planting a tree. For months, it barely looks different. Underground, roots are expanding. Above ground, very little changes. Then one season, growth becomes obvious. Money behaves similarly. Consistency usually feels boring before it feels impressive. One mistake people make is believing wealth starts after they eliminate every imperfection. I'll start investing once I make more. I'll save after this vacation. I'll budget once life settles down. But life rarely settles down. There will always be birthdays, unexpected repairs, family obligations, inflation, work stress. The perfect financial season almost never arrives. Progress belongs to people willing to begin imperfectly. Maybe it's $50, maybe it's 100, maybe it's rebuilding after mistakes. The amount matters less than the habit, because habits become identity. Eventually you stop thinking, I'm trying to save. You start thinking, I'm someone who protects my future. That's a completely different mindset. Let's imagine another scenario. Someone gets a bonus, $5,000. Immediately possibilities appear. Vacation, luxury purchase, home upgrades, new electronics. None of these are inherently bad, but what if instead, part of that bonus quietly bought future freedom? Maybe some pays off expensive debt. Maybe some strengthens an emergency fund. Maybe some begins investing, then the remaining portion funds something enjoyable without guilt. Notice what's happening. This isn't deprivation, it's balance. Because wealth isn't built by punishing yourself. It's built by refusing to let every financial win disappear as quickly as it arrived. Emergency funds deserve more attention than they usually receive. Not because they're exciting, they're incredibly boring, but boring can be powerful. Imagine losing your job with 2 weeks of expenses saved. Now imagine facing that same situation with 6 months available. The external event is identical. The internal experience is completely different. One produces panic. The other creates options. That's why emergency savings aren't simply cash. They're emotional stability. They're negotiation power. They're the ability to say no when you otherwise couldn't. Sometimes wealth isn't about earning more, it's about needing less from every single paycheck. There's another conversation we don't have often enough: comparison. Social media quietly changed the emotional experience of money. Years ago, you compared yourself mostly to neighbors, coworkers, friends. Now you compare yourself to millions. People showing vacations, cars, luxury apartments, designer clothes, perfect kitchens. What you rarely see are the loans, the credit card balances, the financial anxiety, the overtime hours, the sacrifices hidden outside the frame. Comparison creates artificial emergencies. Suddenly, your perfectly functional car feels embarrassing, your apartment feels too small, your wardrobe feels outdated. Nothing actually changed. Only your reference point changed. That's expensive. Sometimes the fastest way to build wealth isn't increasing income, it's decreasing comparison. Let's also talk about earning, because while behavior matters enormously, increasing income still matters too. The healthiest approach isn't choosing between saving more or earning more, it's pursuing both. Develop new skills. Ask for raises when appropriate. Improve your value. Explore opportunities. Not because money defines your worth, because your skills create options. When higher income meets disciplined behavior, that's where 5-year transformations often begin. Not overnight, but steadily, quietly, powerfully. There's something deeply reassuring about realizing you don't need perfect timing. You don't need to predict markets. You don't need to become a financial genius. You don't need to outperform everyone else. You simply need to make enough good decisions consistently. That's much less intimidating. Imagine improving just one financial habit every few months: tracking spending, building savings, reducing unnecessary subscriptions, learning basic investing, negotiating a salary, paying down expensive debt. None of these create viral success stories. Together, they create financial resilience, and resilience compounds just like money does. So, the interesting thing about wealth is that eventually it starts buying something more valuable than possessions: time, the ability to leave a toxic job, the ability to spend afternoons with family, the ability to sleep without constant financial fear, the ability to help someone else without endangering yourself. People often think wealth buys luxury. Sometimes it does, but its greatest gift is usually choice. Choice over your calendar, choice over your stress, choice over your future, and that's a much bigger prize. If you're watching this and feeling behind, you're not alone. Maybe you've made financial mistakes. Most people have. Maybe you've carried debt longer than you hoped. Maybe you spent years surviving instead of planning. Life happens, jobs disappear, families need help, medical bills appear, inflation rises. None of that makes you incapable of building wealth. It simply means your starting point is different. 5 years from today doesn't care where you started. It only responds to the direction you're moving. So what does building wealth in 5 years actually look like? It looks surprisingly ordinary. You spend a little less than you earn. You gradually increase your income when possible. You protect yourself with savings. You invest consistently instead of emotionally. You avoid turning every raise into a bigger lifestyle. You stop competing with strangers on the internet. You make peace with slow progress. And then, you repeat, month after month, year after year. Eventually, something remarkable happens. Your money begins solving problems instead of creating them. Your financial decisions become less emotional. Unexpected expenses become manageable. Your future stops feeling like a source of anxiety and starts feeling like something you're actively shaping, not because you became lucky, because you became intentional. I think that's the version of wealth most people are actually searching for: not endless accumulation, not impressing strangers, not chasing a number that keeps moving, just enough security to breathe easier, enough flexibility to make choices that align with your values, enough confidence to know one setback doesn't erase everything you've built. That kind of wealth doesn't usually arrive all at once. It arrives quietly: one paycheck, one decision, one habit, 1 year at a time. If 5 years feels overwhelming, don't think about 5 years. Think about this month. What's one decision your future self would quietly thank you for? Maybe it's starting an emergency fund. Maybe it's investing for the first time. Maybe it's paying down a little more debt. Maybe it's simply saying no to one purchase that doesn't actually make your life better. Small actions often feel insignificant in the moment, but when repeated consistently, they become the story you tell yourself 5 years from now. And maybe that's the most hopeful part of all. Your financial future isn't decided by one perfect decision, it's shaped by hundreds of ordinary ones. So don't aim to become perfect with money. Aim to become a little more intentional than you were yesterday. Because progress rarely announces itself while it's happening, but one day you'll look back and realize the life you wanted wasn't built in a single breakthrough. It was built in quiet moments when nobody was watching. And those moments, repeated often enough, became freedom. Before you go, I want to leave you with one question. 5 years from now, when you look back at the decisions you're making today, what do you hope you'll thank yourself for? I'd genuinely love to hear your answers, so let me know down in the comments. And if this video helped you see wealth a little differently, not as a race, but as a series of small intentional choices, make sure to like the video and subscribe. Every week we explore the psychology behind money, habits, and financial freedom so you can build lasting wealth with a little more clarity and a lot less stress. I'll see you in the next video.